students, today we are going to be looking at systemic distribution of absorbed drug molecules. The learning objectives are as follows. You should be able to describe the processes by which drugs are absorbed in the systemic circulation and distributed throughout the body. Describe the patterns of distribution that drugs may reflect in the body. Explain the concept of drug volume of distribution. Explain the effect of protein binding on patterns of drug distribution. And explain the significance of protein binding in therapeutics. Let's look at an overview of the processes of drug absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. You would have done absorption already, but it doesn't hurt to review.
It's Professor Dave. I want to tell you about pharmacokinetics.
He knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave explains.
In the previous tutorial, we learned about all of the different ways that drugs can be administered, or basically the ways that drugs can enter the body, whether in the mouth, through the skin, directly into the bloodstream, or otherwise. Now we want to talk about what happens next. Once drugs are inside your body, how do they move around and get to where they need to go? Do they stay in the body indefinitely, or are they eventually removed from the body somehow? The study of pharmacokinetics deals with precisely these issues, and in learning about this, we can highlight four main processes. Those are absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. Absorption generally describes the way the drug moves from its site of administration across one or more membranes, often into the bloodstream, if it was not administered there directly. Distribution describes its journey through the bloodstream to target cells and specific target molecules within. Metabolism describes the ways that it eventually gets modified by enzymes and rendered ineffective. And excretion describes the way it then exits the body, typically either through urine or feces. We want to understand each of these processes, as well as the ways that interactions with food, drink, other drugs, and additional factors can have an influence on them. So let's get a closer look at these now. As we said, the first step is absorption. If a drug is administered topically, this could mean moving through the skin or a mucous membrane and subsequently through the walls of nearby blood vessels. If administered orally, this would mean being absorbed through the lining of the stomach or intestines, a process which would be slowed by the presence of food. Some drugs will pass through the cells that comprise these membranes by passive transport, others by active transport, but one way or another, they will make it through on the way to their destination. In describing this process, it will be appropriate to review the term bioavailability. This term describes the proportion of a drug that is successfully absorbed into systemic circulation. Next, we mentioned distribution. This is the way that drugs move through the bloodstream after being absorbed into it or injected into it. There are many factors that influence this, like the way that the drug interacts with the components of blood, such as plasma proteins. If the drug binds too tightly to these proteins, it will not be able to reach its target cells. Sometimes a second drug is administered in conjunction with the first that has a higher affinity for these proteins than the first one does, thus serving the sole purpose of displacing the primary drug once bound to the protein, allowing it to be delivered to its destination. Beyond these blood elements, there are other factors that may hinder the movement of a drug. There are anatomical barriers found in certain organs. We have already discussed the blood-brain barrier in the biopsychology series. This prevents certain substances from passing out of the bloodstream into brain tissue. Some drugs will not be able to surpass this barrier, while others will, such as psychotropic drugs or those affecting the mind. There is also the blood-placental barrier that regulates which substances can pass from the bloodstream of a pregnant woman into the fetus. There are, however, a number of substances that are able to pass through this barrier that can still do harm to the fetus, such as alcohol and certain medications. And then there is the blood-testicular barrier, which prevents many substances from reaching the male testes, therefore making disorders of the testes difficult to treat. After distribution, there is metabolism. This describes any chemical reactions that the drug may participate in, often aimed at inactivating it and targeting it for excretion. If a drug is traveling through the bloodstream, it is highly likely to be metabolized to some degree. For example, if a drug is taken orally, it will be absorbed through the intestinal wall, and for this reason, the part of the circulatory system it enters is a collection of blood vessels called the hepatic portal system. These carry blood directly to the liver, where they will be metabolized in some manner. This is called the first pass effect, referring to the first pass of a drug through the liver, and this will typically greatly reduce the bioavailability of a drug. In certain cases, metabolism in the liver actually activates a drug, but this is less common, and the first pass effect can inactivate over 90% of an orally administered drug before it is able to reach general circulation. This must be taken into account when determining appropriate dosage. Of course, drugs eventually reach their target cells, but even then, after enough time elapses, they will be metabolized. There are many different enzymes in the body that perform these metabolic functions, which are very important because the immune system is only good at dealing with large biological particles like viruses or bacteria. It has no defense against small molecules, so this detoxification mechanism aimed specifically at small molecules had to evolve for life to exist in a chemical world. Finally, after metabolization, there is excretion, where the drug or its remnants exit the body. This is typically done via exhalation, sweating, urination, or defecation. The kidneys are heavily involved in this process as they must remove harmful substances from the bloodstream. Some drugs are metabolized into gaseous form and are thus easily exhaled. Some drugs are excreted through bile, a substance secreted by the liver to aid in digestion, as bile is recirculated back to the liver via enterohepatic recirculation, whereby most of the drug can then be excreted by the kidneys, and the rest will exit in the form of feces. And as we said, glands that produce fluids such as saliva and sweat can also promote excretion, though this method tends to be less effective. And with that, we have traced the journey of a drug into the body, around the body, and out of the body, which gives us a basic understanding of pharmacokinetics. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always, feel free to email me, ProfessorDaveExplains@gmail.com.
We have looked at the overview of the 4 processes that our drug products will go through when they enter our bodies. But we're going to be specifically looking, as I said before, on drug distribution. So after the drug has been absorbed, then what happens to the drug after that? We got an overview of what happens in distribution, so we're going to go in a little bit more detail. The process of drug distribution is really the transferring of a drug from the bloodstream to tissues after it has been absorbed. So we notice that we have our circulatory system, the plasma, and then the drug is going to distribute to different areas in the body, in the tissue fluid, fat for storage, fetus, breast milk, and then after that it is eliminated through the kidneys and metabolized through the liver. Once a drug enters the circulatory system, it reaches the interstitial and intracellular space, and the organs that are well perfused, meaning organs that have very good blood supply, such as the liver, the kidney, and the brain, they receive the bulk of the drug. With slower distribution to poorly perfused regions, such as the muscles, fats, skin, and other organs. The poorly perfused regions represent a bigger fraction of body mass, and distribution into them may take minutes to several hours. So generally speaking, the process of distribution will tend to be more rapid than how it is eliminated at first. Distribution occurs due to the circulatory system, and distribution is influenced by regional blood flow. Drug distributing in the different areas of the body may go to protein or tissue, to highly perfused areas such as the kidney, liver, and the brain, and onto the target site. So the network of the circulatory system, the drug will pass through this system. The drug moves from the capillaries into the tissue spaces, then into the interstitial fluid across the membrane into cells. So when a drug is absorbed and enters the systemic circulation, it is naturally distributed throughout the fluid and tissues in the body. And the drug eventually reaches a distribution equilibrium when the rate of the drug entry and exit between the blood and tissue is equal. So what happens when a drug is absorbed? So we're going to look at this video to show us what really happens in the bloodstream. It has a lot of graphics, so I think it will come alive to us.
The tablet dissolves in the stomach acid. The tablet breaks down as it absorbs through the tissue of the intestines. It absorbs into a venous capillary bed, then continues into the systemic circulation. The drug has entered into the venous system. Of course, the tissue is actually red, not blue, but we will show the venous system as blue and the arterial system as red for clarity. We're flowing through the vein. What you don't see is that the vein is filled with plasma that flows with the circulation. This is how the drug distributes through the circulation before arriving at the site of action. The drug circulates from the stomach into the portal venous system. The portal venous system sends the drug to the liver to be metabolized. This is called the first pass effect. The drug enters the heart, then exits to go to the lungs, then comes back into the heart, and then goes out of the heart through the arteries. The drug will circulate in the arteries to its site of action.
Okay. If we notice this red part of the venous system represents the arteries, and the blue part represents the vein, right? So the drug is moving from the capillaries into the tissue spaces, and then from the tissue spaces, when it has already interacted with the target sites, it is now distributed again into the venous system and carried to the kidneys for excretion, etc. In addition to metabolism and excretion, the action of the drug may be terminated by redistribution. An example of this can be seen in the redistribution of a drug called sodium thiopental. This drug is used as an anesthetic, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier rapidly, resulting in the concentration in the plasma to decrease. This causes the drug to redistribute from the brain to the muscle and to the adipose tissue. So it's redistributing now. After it has quickly gone to the brain, it now redistributes into the muscle and the adipose tissue. And if you remember from the first couple of slides, the muscle and the adipose tissue are low in perfusion. So a drug that is highly lipid soluble tends to redistribute quickly, and after an infusion or multiple administration of the drug, the poorly perfused areas get saturated with it, and redistribution becomes insignificant for the duration of the action of the drug. So you find that when you give sodium thiopental, even though it is highly lipid soluble and you're expecting that the mechanism of action of that drug or how the drug will perform therapeutically to be long, it's not, because it redistributes really quickly and then it distributes into the low perfused tissues like your fat cells and your muscles, and it's just congregates there, it just stays there. So you find that it has a very short mechanism of action because of the redistribution process. The drug will be more quickly distributed to areas of the body that receive large amounts of blood flow, example the heart and the kidney, than areas that receive little blood flow, as I said before, such as the skin or adipose tissue. Once the drug reaches the adipose tissue, it may remain there for quite a while until levels of the drug in the plasma decline, and then the drug redistributes back into the plasma along a concentration gradient. Okay, so we're looking at a single compartment model. The one compartment open model is the simplest way to describe the process of drug distribution and elimination in the body. Of course, it's a very simplistic view of how the drug distributes in our body. Of course, we're not cylinders made up of water like that. We are very complex, and the drug is going to go to very complex places. But it's a model that is used to explain how the drug moves from one area of the body to another. So just think of a drug with a dose of 1 gram, and you're going to put it in one compartment. At the end of administering this particular drug and the drug distributing evenly throughout that compartment, you are going to have a concentration of the drug in the compartment. Typically 1 gram in 1 liter if our compartment, for argument's sake, is 1 liter. Once the drug is injected, it moves from the plasma and distributes to other areas of the body, while at the same time is metabolized and excreted. So we see the single compartment as our plasma, and that plasma is going to now hold or contain that amount of drug that you would have taken or you would have given to a patient. Okay, so the plasma here is represented by that single compartment model. Because of rapid drug equilibration between the blood and tissues, drug distribution and elimination occurs as if the dose is all dissolved in a tank of uniform fluid, a single compartment from which the drug is eliminated. In a one compartment model, all of the drug enters a single compartment where it distributes readily. The amount of drug that gets eliminated per unit time depends on the concentration of drug in the single compartment at that time. So this is a very, very simplistic view of what happens when we take a particular drug and it is absorbed. It is as if it's just falling in one tank, and that one tank is now going to distribute the drug and produce a particular concentration at any moment in time. Now we have the central and peripheral compartments, known as the multi-compartment model. Recall that the central compartment includes well-perfused organs, or plasma, the heart, the liver, the brain, the kidney, those highly perfused areas where the drug will equilibrate quickly. The peripheral compartments, such as the adipose tissue and the skeletal muscle and the skin, are less well perfused, and the drug equilibrates in those areas much, much more slowly. Redistribution from one compartment to another often alters the duration of the effect of the target tissue. We had mentioned the example, thiopentol, a highly lipid soluble drug, induces anesthesia within seconds because of rapid equilibration between the blood and the brain. So as you inject it, it rapidly distributes into the brain because it is highly perfused. A lot of blood vessels are there, so the drug just goes there very quickly. Despite the fact that the drug is slowly metabolized, however, the duration of anesthesia is short because the drug redistributes from the brain and goes into the less perfused areas, such as the adipose tissue, which can act as a storage site or a drug reservoir. The drug is lipid, so it's going to stay in a lipid surrounded area. So the central compartment includes perfused organs and tissues, while the peripheral compartment includes organs that are less perfused, like your skeletal muscles and the adipose tissue. So the organs that are in the well-perfused organs, as I said before, would be the heart, the blood, the kidney, and the liver, while less perfused organs would be the skeletal muscular system and the adipose tissue. There are some special compartments that need mention, however, and these compartments are found in areas where access to them is very limited because of the structures that are there. Okay, so for example, entry of drug into the cerebrospinal fluid and the central nervous system, for example, is restricted because of the structure of the capillaries that are in that area. The blood-brain barrier, again, limits certain drugs from entering that area because of the structures around it, and other areas such as the pericardial fluid, bronchial secretions, and the fluid in the middle ear. Very difficult to treat diseases that occur in these areas because of the access, the poor access to drugs. Very small amount of drugs have access to these areas.